Welcome to Policy for Normal People. This is Christy Amada, your host. I am joined today by Benjamin Rifkin, founder of Snowdrift Co., and currently the growth and digital strategy consultant of the company. He is founder of this Colorado-based digital marketing agency. They help service-based businesses strengthen websites, improve visibility in traditional as well as the new AI-powered searches, and turns that visibility into qualified business opportunities. So we're going to talk a lot about what his business does, problems that he solves for his customers today. I am excited to get into that discussion because I know I'm going to learn a lot. I've been really ramping up my use of AI in terms of helping my clients at Amada Development Services, the sponsor of this show, with their AI workflow strategies, essentially turning AI into kind of an executive assistant or relationship manager, if you will. But I know I'm at the very start of this probably compared to where Benjamin is. So I think we will all benefit from what he has to say about how he helps businesses navigate this whole new world that I feel like we're in. Benjamin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Christy. Great to be here.
Yeah, wonderful to have you. So obviously, folks, if you're familiar with the show by now, you know that Policy for Normal People is about talking about what businesses are doing that is really helping people out in the world in various ways, nonprofits. I invite all kinds of leaders on. So we always talk about that first and with our guests. And then we, of course, nerd out a little bit on how policy integrates with that, because that's my shtick. And I think that's a very important part of conversations, particularly for the normal people like us in the world who are not politicians, but we are simply trying to understand, how does policymaking help us, hurt us, or fall somewhere in between? So we're going to get into all of that today, and I'm looking forward to it in the context of, as I said, the topic being when AI shapes what we see, who sets those rules? I think that's a very confusing, often frustrating, but also exciting kind of atmosphere that we have going on. But Benjamin, first, really excited to hear more about Snowdrift Co. Tell us what inspired you to found the company, and a little bit about you and the type of problems you solve for your customers.
Great. Thank you, Christy. So just a little bit about Snowdrift. We just had our 3-year anniversary as a business back in July. Very exciting. And we developed the company. Thank you. We made it. So again, another year. We developed the company primarily based on all of this experience that I've had, and I'm a co-founder, and I started back in the internet space in the late 90s, and I've been helping all different types of service-based businesses, B2B businesses, B2C businesses, drive leads. And over the years, we've just seen that digital marketing agencies are going in a certain direction, which is great, and it works for a lot of people. We're putting a little bit of a different touch on it. We're much smaller. We're boutique right now. We're not a massive publicly traded company. And that allows us to go ahead and spend a lot more time with our clients to help them accomplish what their goals are. And the typical underlying goal that most clients have is, I need more business, or I need better business, or I need the people that are coming to my site, to my business, convert better. And that's the ultimate goal. And we like clients that don't have a lot of technical issues, but we certainly really do like, as I think of like the 3-legged dog, who just needs a lot more help and support, and, potentially maybe get a 4th leg, if we can get that 4th leg in there. So now the system can work properly. So we like scenarios where clients are really challenged and have issues, and other people maybe just don't want to spend the time or just don't know how to do it. And we like to uncover and fix that.
Do you primarily work with small businesses?
Yeah, I would say in terms of, we're probably up to just a very small business. We don't really, we'll work with anyone, right? But primarily our sweet spot is a small business up to about 25 million in revenue.
Okay, fantastic. And to clarify for our listening audience too, you're based in Colorado. Do you mainly serve clients in a particular region within your state? Are you nationwide? What is your range? What is your reach?
We are a nationwide business.
Excellent. I was thinking when you were talking about, the thing that businesses ultimately want is that larger picture goal of growth and scalability. What I think you and I both do in our businesses, but in different ways. Me as a strategist, in the nuts and bolts of the technology and search engine optimization. you kind of start out with a discovery call with someone who knows they want to grow more, but then that becomes a really into the weeds kind of discussion about so many things, right? How the technology is working for them, whether they're using it properly. I know AI, sometimes you can kind of tell when someone hasn't really looked at your business and taken the time to know who you are before they just send you some automated message that sometimes just doesn't land well. Do you help businesses sort of navigate that kind of tricky situation?
Well, so I think for us, what we're doing more is that we're building the high quality content within the website itself so that the way that the user gets to the site, the potential new client prospect actually gets there, the information and language that's on the site leads them to, the goal is to lead them to an action. And the action would be email, phone, call, chat, whatever the way is that they can lead that user to then connect to the human being on the other side to have that conversation that you're talking about. And we are using AI quite a bit. We use it all day, every day.
Yeah,
we use it
too.
for our own, but I will say that the majority of the content that we write and develop and publish is always reviewed by a human prior to going live. And then in some scenarios, we are testing out situations, and we have been, where AI, we've been working on it so well and have trained it so well that we can actually push the content out. And then after it goes live, it then gets, it gets reviewed. And we're doing the test on that phase with our clients, and our clients are aware of this because we want to see how good it is, how many red lines come back. And we have less red lines on that situation versus when a human being goes ahead and writes content without AI. We have much more red lines that way.
That's so fascinating. And there's so much. I mean, you and I met on a platform called Alignable, and it's a networking platform that's been just great to meet people all over the United States, even all over the world, like yourself. And that platform is for finding essentially networking partners. And I think one of the things that you and I discovered in initial conversations as we were getting to know each other and know each other's businesses is that there's a lot of synchronicity between what you do and how I help someone in terms of where and what point they're in a customer journey, right? Because I focus on that a lot in my business, about where are the gaps and the breaks in that customer journey. And from a technological standpoint, really taking a look at that. And as you said, got to get them in the door first. You got to get that first touch point, right? So this is super important. Excellent. So I do you have a particular, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have like a particular favorite story or problem that you solved for a customer that you're particularly proud of? Love to hear about that, and what the challenge was, and then, sort of the case study, summary of what you did.
Sure. So, gosh, there's a couple really good ones. As I mentioned earlier, we like the three-legged dog. And so,
good old Lucky the dog, right?
Not calling any of our clients a three-legged dog, but what happened prior, is this scenario. I'm thinking immediately one of our first clients. He's a law firm. And focused on personal injury, so car accidents, all motor vehicle accidents, premises liability, so slip and fall, things of that nature, and then general PI. But that's the main focus is going after car accidents, and very big metro to target. When we uncovered and dove into the details, nearly every referring search term or query that we would see within Google Search Console had nothing to do with car accidents, and all other practice areas, which they didn't want to be in, which is criminal law. While although they did criminal law, they don't want to advertise for that. They want car accidents. So after about a year, maybe a little bit less, but about a year, when you look back at that Google Search Console report, we shifted the entire focus, and it's all car accident related, premises related, search terms. And the result is today, now after about almost 2 years, that earlier this year, actually, so it's August. So back in January, February, the client stopped buying leads that he had been doing forever, for a very long time. He stopped buying leads because we turned his entire solution, his digital website, digital footprint, into a marketing machine for him, which was driving in the leads that he was looking for. And so even today in August, we have a new law in the state of Colorado that lawyers are not allowed to buy leads from outside third parties, outside of the state.
Really? Interesting.
Yep. And so that went into effect August 12th, I believe. That's okay, because we got ahead of it. And so they're generating enough leads that they don't need to go out there. And so I would say using AI technology to do a lot of this with content build and research and understanding and doing the work of many different folks moving much faster now than ever. We were really able to turn that entire ship around. And so that's a pretty impressive story. I've got many of these, but in a very difficult, tough, competitive market, one of the most competitive markets in the US for lawyers to get a car accident case, we're consistently bringing in a very nice flow month over month.
Excellent. And I think on your site, you mentioned you have particular markets that you do work with. I mean, small business in general, but I know law firms, as you just mentioned, and then healthcare facilities as well, or medical professionals.
Yeah. So mostly service-based businesses as well.
Okay.
So think, we work with those folks. We work with healthcare as well. And so we have a great senior assisted living and memory care facility that has multiple locations, well over 10 locations. That also great story. They were having a very difficult time from a local SEO perspective. They weren't being found. And so we got in there and we retooled the entire back end, front end, brand new design, content, restructure, re-architecture, and really focused on a local SEO program, just like with a law firm. And so what that does is that ultimately now allows that senior assisted living facility to stop buying their form of leads, which is a referral from a third party. And now they're generating their own marketing leads. So by their own first party data. And so what that does for both of these businesses is it actually increases their margins significantly internally. And that's the result. And that's what the main focus of, I think, everything that we're trying to do with most clients is help them generate a lot more revenue for
and
their
save
business.
revenue or save cost, right? Because I mean, buying leads, as you were talking about, I mentioned a couple of times. I mean, I can't count the number of times I've had, businesses or individual solopreneurs, whatever, I can get you this many leads a month and all. And, you're kind of paying for whatever it is that they're putting in place. But it sounds like you're trying to enable and empower businesses through what you put in place for them to sort of have their own internal engine, if you will, that's going to generate those leads just by having better SEO, better visibility, right?
Yeah, there's always been this lore of these data facts that go out of SEO is the best investment for a business over time because it just keeps generating. And if you do it properly, it keeps generating and generating leads. Buying leads is very important for a lot of businesses. And we support those businesses that are doing that. We just feel that there's this channel, this SEO channel that is nowhere near being dead, which is a lot of people are throwing that out there. It's not even close to being dead, just the opposite. And so we feel that that's a really strong channel that a business should focus on generating revenue because it's free space that's given out by Google. You're not paying for that. And once you're there, it's not that you own it, but you really, if you do it correctly, you really establish your presence there versus leads, which is you buy the lead and then you got to go back and buy the lead again. It's almost more like leasing or renting versus ownership.
Interesting. I did not know that part of it. I was familiar with just, you can buy leads, but not realizing that, that kind of creates a endless cycle of repurchase that maybe could save you money doing it a little bit differently. That's fascinating. And it kind of segues into another question I had about SEO. So, we had SEO and people were running to catch up to learn, okay, what is that? How do we do it? And of course it stands for, for my listeners and all, search engine optimization. And even that may not fully tell a person, a normal person like myself who's just trying, focusing on what I do with my business and maybe not necessarily as tech savvy on that end. I'm getting there, but there's always constant changes. But you mentioned that SEO, and then you also mentioned, and I want to come back to SEO in a more specific way in a second, but can you, for the benefit of our listeners, can you explain the terms that you were using? A Google console, what is that? What does it do?
Sure. Google Search Console. It's free. It's a Google tool that you can connect your website to this tool. And it will provide you with just a slew of data. Specifically, something that you want to make sure is that your pages are written correctly so that they're indexed within Google. Because Google has been historically de-indexing pages that are not relevant or accurate. So if that happens and you see that, you have to really not be emotional and be very rational and understand why it's being de-indexed and what you potentially need to do to make it better to get indexed, or just trash it and move on to something different. And so Google Search Console just gives you a massive amount of data, and it's just an excellent tool.
And just to clarify further, thank you for that. What we're doing kind of big picture wise on that, Google's free, the console and these tools, as you mentioned, but there's always a caveat to things that are quote unquote free. You've got to please Google's rankings if you want to get visibility, right? And that's something that you help people do. Is that an outcome that ultimately you try to achieve for your clients?
Yeah. So for us, and we have a case study on this actually, that we talk about this on our website, where you go into a business and they have a massive amount of traffic, but when you use Google Search Console, you start learning about what that traffic is. And the question you have to ask is this good traffic or bad traffic, right?
Wow.
Sometimes it can be in the middle, but usually that it's good or it's bad. And what I mean by that is that if it's good, that means that those folks are actually converting into business. If it's bad traffic, in our opinion, it's because none of that is turning into business, right? And so in that aspect, you can learn from Google Search Console to get better rankings, to be higher up within Google search visibility. So your search engine optimization is optimizing the search engine so that when you enter a keyword search, your website will show up in that search related term or terms. By really using Google Search Console and cleaning out your website and making it completely relevant, sometimes that means dramatically reducing the traffic. And when you do that, and we've proven this out, that when you dramatically reduce and get rid of the bad traffic, although you have less traffic, it results in higher revenue for the business. Because
so that
now
turns
you're getting
the more is better on its head, doesn't it? I mean, we kind of tend to think of growth only in terms of more sometimes in many spaces, but it's, there's a good example of where that may not be true, right?
Right. So, and that's a concept that I think is kind of hard sometimes for people to understand or to buy into, but we've proven it out to be, and it's very successful.
That's so fascinating. So I live in the very congested area of the DC metro area, Washington, DC. I don't know if there is such a thing as good traffic around here, but at least for what you do, at least for what you're doing in the tech space, it sounds like there is. So that's good to know. Let's get in a little bit, if we can now, to AI and our sort of policy intersection topic today. And I do want to have SEO as part of this too. Everybody seems to have different degrees of understanding of what it is, but also what its value is and what do I do with it? Like, okay, it's there. I know I need to do something. What in the heck do I do with it? And now we have AI that's in the mix here. And that's, as we know, it's revolutionizing, changing lots of things. I don't think that we really, truly know, despite all the friction and the policy debates out there about good, bad, yes, no, hate it, love it. I think we're just still very in the early stages of learning. You're creating a website, you're making it look nice. You're even maybe good at telling your story on that site and things that I help people kind of improve. But what's happening, what that churn is in the back is important. Businesses have long depended on Google to be found at this point. And now consumers are using AI generated summaries, assistants to search, compare businesses. Some people aren't doing the common phrase, just Google it, is getting transitioned into just AI it. That doesn't sound as good, but it doesn't roll off the tongue as well. But I know that a lot of people, including myself, do that first because you can get more specific information. You can get a summary. You can say, give me in bullet points what I want, this information. It's a great tool, but I think it is still, in some ways, by some misunderstood. Google still claims, still insists that traditional SEO fundamentals really still matter in its AI search features. Do you agree with that?
100%, 100%. And there's this we're seeing this. We've seen this for years since the internet started back in the late 90s. There's something that people catch on to. People are trying to create, whatever their sale is. And in this case, it's getting ranked in AEO, AI, GEO, like all the different acronyms and getting ranked over there. But if you think about it, like and this is not anything that's novel or this is we all know this, the people that are in this space. And people that are not in this space probably know this at this point too, is that AI tools, I say AI like Kleenex at this point, because I don't want to pinpoint anyone specifically, but they know who they are. We all do. They scraped Google. They put it into their LLM, their large language model, which is what ChatGPT is, or Perplexity, or well, I guess Claude, things of that nature. All these other LLMs that are being built. And the technology is so smart that it's able to regurgitate it and give you the information that not only sounds good, gives you a little pat on the back, good question.
It does,
but really gives you like some incredible results. But you cannot, as a business, if you're not fundamentally set up correctly, and we're talking about major metros here. So if you're in a little tiny metro in the middle of nowhere and your business is ranking really well and there's no one else around, all the best to you. Good job. Congratulations. And wow, that's amazing.
If that exists anymore. Yeah.
If you're in DC, New York City, Colorado, Denver, LA, wherever you are, any major metro, Houston, you need to have a functionally correct sound website that's architected correctly so that you will be picked up and used as a resource within AI search results. If you're not, then you're just not going to get the activity that you should get. And if you follow Google's rules and you do it correctly, and you follow the way to, exactly what's going on, then you'll be showing up in Google, you'll be showing up in AI. And so it's not overnight, it's not instant, but it takes, sometimes a couple months, but it works, and it works really well. And it's surprising when a client, when they get a call and they said, "Hey, I found you on AI."
Yeah.
Right?
So I guess
I found you on
that's
Google.
Right. And really that's kind of, from what you were saying, kind of the same thing, right? Because there had to be a starting point from which we created the AI models and all. And would you say that's maybe a misconception that some business owners and people in general might have about the connection between Google that's been there long before and then, how the AI technology was built or is being built?
What do you mean by that? Exactly.
I was referring to when you were talking about how the AI systems, Claude, Anthropic, ChatGPT, OpenAI, how they came to be and where what their connection with Google is in terms of how we searched on Google before, the information coming from there initially.
Well, I think those types of companies have been around long before this boom that happened, where all of a sudden one day it was like someone opened up the door and said, "Here you go, guys, go for it." They've been working on this technology for a very long time. In fact, a lot of this type of AI technology concept of the if-then statements. I mean, this is 20 plus years ago. I can recall seeing technology and being pitched on stuff like this. We're now at a place in this technology where it is just so user friendly. It's so easy, right? And it's useful. It's an assistant. It's a personal assistant to you, whether you're using that for going to the soccer game with your kids, figuring out your health, figuring out what article you should write next, or mental,
or even building systems. Yeah, even building systems. I mean, systems. It's incredible. I now have figured out that I can integrate it with a lot of other platforms and tools like my CRM and even my Google Calendar, and I don't even have to go into those separately necessarily to just tell AI, because it learns from what I'm doing over time.
That's right.
Who do I need to be talking to today? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Google and Anthropic and all of these folks, ChatGPT, all the LLMs that are out there, OpenAI, they've all somehow way or another have had to have been working together or know about what was happening. And now we're moving into a place where they are all working together. So the world is massive. For example, I can go into OpenAI, ChatGPT, and communicate directly with my CRM. So I could tell ChatGPT what task to create and the information to put in it. We'll just do it. And it does it with the exact same naming convention and organization and everything I need to do. And so using tools like that is great. Just a quick, not a plug, but where we are as a business that we are helping in building our for our clients. But on the side, we're trying to develop as well to make our clients better. And so we're working on a variety of different tools that have basically taken the place of so many humans, and the machine now is learning and guiding us based on what we've told it to do to help us with the work that we do, but we're telling it what to do. So we're the humans, it's our mind. We're working through it, and we're testing constantly, finding bugs, fixing it to the point where we're pretty close to having incredible tools that will go out there for a variety of builds and quality assurance techniques and things of that nature for our websites. And we've been using it, and it's been very successful so far.
That's exciting. I'm going to continue to look forward to seeing seeing your advancements and checking in with you every now and then to see, hey, what's new, right?
Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
And I'll say, we're not alone.
Sure.
I talk with people that are out there constantly, and I'm, share ideas of what we're working on, because I think it's really important to be open source in your mind with other folks and share as much as you can, because that'll help us all collectively get better. And there are a lot of people out there building a lot of tools right now. It's an incredible time. And I project that over the next however many years, very soon, we'll be seeing a lot more folks that are multimillionaires and higher, that are just regular people like me and you, just hanging out, and they're, trying to help folks out and building something absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I'm a history lover, and I think about the access to the pursuit of happiness in the preamble, and we've taken that to a whole new level and expanded that and opened that access to so many more people who might not otherwise have had it under the traditional systems of how to build businesses and grow, right? So it's all very, very exciting.
But I throw, as we all do it, we all should constantly, because I don't think everybody's thinking this way. You have to have a caution flag, because it hallucinates sometimes. AI.
It does. You need to verify it.
And even when you get to the point when you've trained it where you believe it's not hallucinating, there's an update on the back end of the LLM that you're working in, which then I think is what's causing sometimes new hallucinations. So you must always check your citations. You must always check your work, read your content. Don't put stuff out there that does not make sense. Everyone can see it, and there's little tells that you can tell when you get it. As you can get a piece of AI content. Just, do your due diligence.
Sure. Yeah. And we're service-based businesses. I know that we both do that caution with our clients too, that the idea is to help the human, not to replace the human factor, the sentient part of what we all try to do when we're helping people should always be a constant in things. AI at the end of the day is still just a tool. It isn't a replacement for people. And I'm firmly in the camp of thinking about that in terms of how everything from policies that are developing around it to just how we serve our customers. And that's kind of a nice segue too, and into a little bit of policy nerding out, as I like to call it here. I'd love to get your thoughts on a few things. So the Federal Trade Commission recently requested public comments, which I believe have now closed, on a proposed policy statement. It concerns AI companies that may be distorting or suppressing accurate information in ways that consumers wouldn't expect. The comment period, as I said, is closed, but the statement remains in proposal status. It does, I think, raise a broader question about what consumers could expect when they rely on AI-generated information and recommendations. And this kind of points back to what you just said about the caution. How much, in your mind, how much do consumers and businesses understand at this point why an AI system recommends one source or product or business over another?
This is a really touchy subject right now, because it actually coincides, I feel like, with what's going on with Meta. And the government going after Meta, because Meta is not protecting the underage user from whatever had happened, right? And what's going on with the kids. And so from a very basic standpoint, I guess the question that I always ask is why? Like, why are you allowing yourself to spend so much time on these devices and in these areas where maybe you're not getting the best information, you're not being protected, things are a little scary or dangerous. And that question then unravels another question of is, if someone's actually going into these systems, is there like something happening from a mental perspective of addiction that's keeping us on our devices and keep going back to Meta or AI tools to find this information? And I think from a public policy perspective, I would say that it's really on the onus of the user. So the caveat emptor, buyer beware kind of concept. That being said, we've already proven out that we need to look out after people, because not everybody thinks this way or critically thinks this way. And maybe they took a step into the space and they got lost. Next thing you know, it's, now they're believing it. So we have to show empathy to these folks that maybe need this assistance and help. So how the government is going to create policy and command a publicly traded or private company to do something to protect the people, I think is probably pretty good, because we've seen this historically over time. Going over to, let's say, all of these mass torts in the legal space of, we find out that chemicals are, really bad for humans. So we got to stop, using those chemicals. Well, those companies didn't go out of business necessarily. They just changed and pivoted and found new chemicals. And that's what AI is going to have to do. They're going to have to change and pivot and create different information and really suppress the really bad, terrible info. That being said, I don't know if that's the best idea right now. And the reason why is because if you start putting limitations, and this is a conversation that's been going on for a few years now, I feel like all the way around from a lot of communities. If you put the limitations on AI right now, well, the rest of the world is not putting limitations on AI, and they're beating us to it as a country. And so when we look at that viewpoint from a political standpoint of country versus country, now we're going into other very difficult decision-making waters of what do you do? And in the state of Colorado, they actually did put limitations on AI a while back. And in other states, they put limitations on certain websites that can and can't be seen within that state. So perhaps maybe it's just simply, I'm not sure,
Yeah, it's complicated on many levels. Everything from clean energy, environmental, the decisions or not to use up more open space and land, or land that could be, is being used maybe for something else, farmland, cropland, or simply just to rewild and allow ecosystems to replenish. I mean, all of these discussions are being had around this innovation. And I know that to one degree or another, some of them at least, maybe not all, happens with every major innovation. I'm sure when the steam engine was invented, and then, we had tracks being built across the United States, there was an impact. I think I like what you're saying about, it may be too soon to put too many restrictions on, because we're still trying to get our head around what exactly the trade-offs, consequences, as well as the benefits are. And I know that from a personal standpoint, I have a son that is a young attorney just starting out, and he's represented Meta on a couple of small situations where if people, sometimes their algorithms, as you know, they've got policies set up within those where something will trigger a shutdown of a Facebook user's profile. Well, if that user happens to be using Facebook significantly to generate revenue and they're running a business as well, they get upset about that naturally. I mean, we all would get upset about it, but that's a particular problem for a business owner. But at the same time, that's a free service. No one's twisting the arm of the user to use that business for that purpose. And so it's not the same either exactly as, say, the electric company and the use of the grid and the demand on it. It's complicated. It's very complicated. And we're still in the infancy of trying to understand it. As you astutely pointed out, the development of all this has been in the works for quite some time and has become more sophisticated. It's just much more user friendly. A lot like I'm going to date myself here, but I certainly remember in the 90s when I was finishing up in college, we still had the big clunky desktops that took up the entire desk, and you were, MS DOSing it all, on a black screen, the black screen with the green, ugly green font, before the beautiful Microsoft window comes along, right? And so, I mean, it reminds me a little bit of that. That revolutionized how we did so many things, not to mention the awful sound of the dial-up to get on the internet.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I think you just also hit on a public policy, and I'm blanking on, you'll have to fill in. I think you may know this, of the case of the farm and the women that decided to not take the, $28 million that they were offered.
Yeah. It was a big article in the Wall Street Journal just last week. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were going to take the deal, and then they changed their mind.
I feel like these companies, so AI has this energy component. If someone can figure out how to not use so much energy to make all of this work, that would be great. But in today's world
too, yeah, land space.
And in today's world, to make this work, we need massive energy. What would be really great is if these companies come in, and if they had worked with these folks on the farm to have started that public, which we're seeing around the country right now by different cities, having that public policy plan. So the company, if they go in, the energy company, they should be responsible to pay for all the energy. It should not set off the energy company to then be allowed to increase the rate for the people that are living there because there's more energy being used. The company should subsidize that. And maybe that's where the federal government needs to come in and help subsidize that as well, perhaps. I'm not really sure. No, I doubt it. I think we want to stay private. That's the debate that's
happening. Yeah, that's the debate that's happening. You're right on target. And then the other thing, too, is we need to educate our policymakers around this, local, not just federal, because, a lot of things in the news nowadays are, especially with the sad disappearance, I think it's sad that we've lost so many of our localized news outlets, newspapers and all are folding up everywhere. And so news is much more a worldly, national kind of thing, or international, all of which is, nice to have access to. But when something is impacting you next door or a few blocks away or a few miles away, I think that there's a gap in communications and education, perhaps, of just exactly what all of the impact factors are that should be weighed, right? I mean, it shouldn't just be about profit. The question of the farmland was a really interesting one to me, and it was a very long article. So many things are emotionally tied up in these decisions, too. People have an affinity to their legacy, which is tied to the land. And as someone who comes from rural America myself in West Virginia, from a small farm, not one that size, that's a massive farm, I understand. I'm empathetic to those ladies. But then and of course, they're getting harassed by neighbors and residents in the county who see this as an opportunity to sort of bring back and revive a place that was maybe hollowed out in globalization or for who knows what other reasons, but there's not a lot of opportunity. They see that as a potential opportunity. And then policymakers are capitalizing on that conversation as well, in addition to whatever tax and revenue and things. Of course, it all gets tied up into what do we know and what do we not know, because I know that there's a big fight in southern West Virginia right now. There was one in Maine that Governor Mills got involved, was kind of involved in before she left office. And it was that decision about, well, what are the trade-offs? What are the benefits of it? Is it going to really create the jobs that are supposed or promised, or are we just talking about short-term construction jobs and then it's not really permanent resident jobs? So many questions around it. And then I had someone recently, another kind of policy an interested person that said, why are we not taking advantage of the benefits we got from EPA regulation that many of which those studies have been done on brownfields, and they've actually cleaned those up? Why couldn't we use those? They're not good for farmland. They're not good for crops. They're not going to be good for building houses on. Why not have a look at that? Maybe that. And then I know they're even trying to build, or have built, I think, AI data centers rather in the Arctic regions. So I don't know, just lots of questions around that. But you have you have a unique perspective as using AI, regularly using these tools to help your customers and businesses grow. So, you see probably more than someone who's not a business owner, that's maybe just someone worried about the noise that's going to come next door from one of these. But you see it from the inside angle too, the benefits of it and what it can do for small business owners who might not have otherwise started a business in the years past, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's even a bit, so on the whole property situation, I think there's a eminent domain issue that pops up. Is the government, so what happened? I guess my question is what happens? Let's just say, they didn't sell the farm, but all of a sudden the people that own that company go around to all of the neighbors all around them, around the farm, and start to build properties of energy facilities. And then the farm gets stuck, right? So there's that scenario as well. So, and I think that takes over into all these different areas. I think you hit a major great point that there's a lot of land that we probably can be using that doesn't need to be where we take over a farm or someone's property necessarily. I think that's where the government really needs to go on fast pace, high speed, go in a room and no one leaves until we figure this out situation. And we create the policy so that water, land, chemicals, all of this stuff, so that people within the communities are not negatively affected, and the business that wants to go in there will support that community. Because you also hit a very good point, which is that these are data centers. These are not, and even if it was, let's say, an Amazon distribution warehouse, there's not too many humans working in there. So it's not like we're actually generating, we might be generating for the construction company to go in there. It's probably not going to be a local construction company. Right? Same with all of the people working there. Sure, you'll have a couple locals, but then the job's going to be over. So in terms of generating revenue and bringing business, I'm not so sure that a data center is actually the answer.
Yeah, I think that's a logical conclusion from just research and writing that I've done on this subject, because a lot of those jobs are short term, and people, as you say, that are going to come outside of the state or region where it's being built. And, to be fair to the companies, part of the reason why that happens, there's lots of reasons, but part of it is once you train crews of builders to build that particular unique kind of structure, you got to have people who are trained and know how to set all of that up. And so the retraining of people locally probably is cost prohibitive in some cases. I've read some on this about, because the argument is it's easier, it's cost effective, it's cheaper to get a new piece of land or a farmland that's pretty much open space once you move the cows and the chickens somewhere else. But you're not, as opposed to, say, refurbishing or repurposing an existing commercial edifice, right? That costs a lot of money. You could do it, but it can sometimes cost more than just building new. And I've seen this with Walmart. They how many buildings have they abandoned? Big buildings that took up a lot of space. There was a place back home in West Virginia. They built a Walmart. It had a mixed trade-off because it ran off all those small mom and pop places that people grew up knowing and loving, and they were part of the fabric of the community. So there's the community identity that's going away from that. But at the same time, it brought resources and items and things that before, when I was real small, you had to drive more than an hour to get to. But then they move, and it's more cost effective to just abandon a big building and build somewhere else rather than either expand on the existing one or whatever else the other alternatives would be. So I'm worried that is kind of what's happening here too. To your point about getting everybody in the room, these are the conversations I think that they need to have about, you may incur some costs up front, but you're also making billions. I mean, we just saw, I think Anthropic's quarterly revenue was $65 billion ahead of its expected IPO. So what obligation do they have to communities to figure this out and to sit down with policymakers as well as residents? And, it's almost like a collective bargaining kind of situation in a much bigger scale.
Well, it comes down to the classic question, is it human first or dollar first? What's more important? And what's more important to us as humans in society? And probably everybody has their answer to that. You have to figure out what your answer is, I guess. And I just really think that you really nailed it where you just talked about the abandoned Walmart, Kmart, Sears, go down the line, right?
Yeah.
Borders
We're
Books.
dating ourselves now, Benjamin, but I mean, it's true. It's true. I think the last thing in the Landmark Mall right up from me here in Alexandria, everything was gone. They've now are fortunately repurposing it into a really nice, top of the line new Innova hospital. So that's great to see. It's already commercial space. It's not going to be rewilded. You can't, environmentally it's already destroyed, but you can reuse it for something of benefit to the community for that. So that's great to see. But the Sears was the last thing to go. But now, the malls are, often you've got stretched malls that are just sitting there vacant.
Yeah. So I guess the other question I would have is, why can't they build vertically? Right. And then also what ultimately, and I'm probably going down a rabbit hole here, but why can, and not everyone would want to agree with this, but perhaps the government, again, needs to step in with the support of these companies. And I don't know if this is doable or not, but we all can have solar. We all collectively have enough homes and buildings everywhere that if we put our thinking caps on and throw solar on there and capture the energy that way, perhaps we don't have to build many facilities. I'm not really sure. I'm not an expert in this space, but I just know that this is something that, it's a hot topic right now. These large corporations are going to come into small towns, and the small towns are voting whether or not they want this or not. And how well versed and knowledgeable are these politicians on these subject matters? Because they do.
It is very new. Yeah.
I agree. It'll be interesting to talk about this and come back to this in a couple of years and see what happens.
I think so too, for sure. Yeah, wow. Great discussion. So just a couple of things as we sort of move towards a wrap up. We've talked a lot about the AI debate already and what so many of the complicated entanglements are there. I mean, AI itself is being used to develop a lot of the things that we want to save, ironically, by not building the data centers. So, it's sort of coming full circle. And as you said, it's going to take a while. It's going to take education. And I think in a couple of years, it would be fun to revisit that conversation. Getting back to just wrapping up with what you do for folks, and, because you're helping people, you're focused obviously on, as AI is one, I'm sure, of many tools, helping businesses to grow and to move into the next era so that they don't become obsolete, so that, they can keep pace, I'm sure. Including, so here's kind of a final question, but feel free to add anything that you'd like here as we sort of move towards a wrap up. Does anyone, including the technology companies developing AI, do they really understand the trade-offs? I mean, we've talked a lot about the people who are impacted by it. Do you think that even the AI companies themselves fully understand what they've unleashed? I asked that question when Facebook came out, so now I'm asking it again.
It's interesting. We always hear these stories of these, I'm dating myself slightly to all these internet folks, the guys who started Insta and Facebook, and the alleged story of they don't let their kids go on it. They don't let, they don't want their own personal kids to have devices, things of that nature. I think that these companies had an idea of what it was going to do. I don't think we're anywhere near what it's going to do. I think I believe Sam Altman said this on a podcast a year or two ago that I was listening to. The AI that today, right now, is going to be worse than the AI tomorrow. And that actually happens through the day. It's learning and getting better. I mean, the AI that we're working in today is so much smarter and easier than it was when it first blew up just a year or two ago, when it got really crazy. I don't know that they know the full capacity of what the future is going to hold. I don't think anybody's a future teller, so to speak. I think that there's a lot of visions. I think there's a lot of ideas. And I think most importantly, what AI, the beauty of it, that what I find is I'm so fascinated by it, is how much more efficient I can be. Be more efficient sometimes creates an inefficiency, but once you figure out your inefficiency that you're doing and you tackle that with AI to become more efficient, eventually, if you can get through that cycle, it's the sky's the limit. So all of a sudden you're able to do, once you figure out how to use it properly, you're doing the work of a lot of people. So you're becoming more efficient. What's going to be interesting is in the future is what happened next. So I've nailed my efficiency. Is it actually making me smarter? Is it making me more intelligent? And I actually think it is. And I think it is because when you get really good, solid quality answers out of it, and if you're reading through it, it opens your mind up to think about, okay, let's go down this rabbit hole. Let's explore this and that and the other thing. So overall, I guess to sum up your answer, I don't think anybody knows the future of what's going to happen. I think there's really good bets that you can make. But I think that if you are really patient and you learn the systems and you're not afraid to dive in, nothing bad is going to happen if you dive into AI and you start using it effectively, responsibly, socially responsibly. I think you're going to come out really on top. I think this is a great bet for every human in this world to dive into at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's here to stay. So I think we're better off to really figure it out. And you made a really important, it was subtle how you did it, but I want to highlight something you just said. And this is a great way to kind of segue to the end. For those who are worried about the harm that AI can do, I think it's important to remember, as you kind of said in your own way, what you get out of it is based on what you put in. So learning to create better prompts to how to use it responsibly and ethically, that you're putting in inputs that are going to help you get smarter, to help you organize your thinking and all. You're still the captain of the ship, but it's helping you do the work of maybe a whole crew, just to use a metaphor. So learning how to use it correctly and understand what its potential is, I think is where we need to get to. And everybody's going to get there at a different pace, but it is important to remember that we're still the drivers. You know, it's kind of like you get what you pay for. Well, your output is as good as what your input is, right?
Right. Preparation, doing the work. You got to do the work. It's not just going to be done for you.
For sure. Benjamin Rifkin, founder of Snowdrift Co. It's been a pleasure. I've learned so much. I really thank you for your time and being on the show today.
Well, thank you. This has been great, and I hope we can do this another time.
Absolutely. Let's pick up that 2-year conversation and see where it goes.
Right. Absolutely. Thanks, Christy.
Have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye now.